Good morning and welcome back. This is World News here on TVP World. I'm Saria Stremska. The US has suspended all military aid to Ukraine following the altercation at the White House between Volodymyr Zelenskyy, Donald Trump and J.D. Vance on Friday. The decision will affect ammunition, vehicles and other equipment, including weapons currently in transit. Since Donald Trump has taken office, no new U.S. aid to Ukraine has been approved. The U.S. Congress has agreed to give Ukraine $175 billion in assistance since the beginning of Russia's full-scale invasion in 2022. Although Donald Trump says his country has given Ukraine $350 billion. Donald Trump has said that the minerals deal with Ukraine is, quote, a great deal for Washington, indicating that he intends to revive the agreement despite recent tensions with Kyiv.
It's a great deal for us because, Biden very, very foolishly, stupidly, frankly, gave $300 billion and $350 billion more accurately to a country to fight and to try and do things. And you know what happened? We get nothing. Just gave it. We could have rebuilt our entire U.S. Navy with $350 billion. Think of it, $350 billion. We could have rebuilt our U.S. Navy. So he gave it away as fast as the money could be gone. And what we're doing is getting that all back and a lot more than that. And we need, it's very important for this business that we're talking about here with chips and semiconductors and everything else. We need rare earths. And the deal we have is we have the finest rare earths that you can.
Małgorzata Bonikowska, the president of the Center for International Studies, spoke about the issue with TVP World and said that Europe needs to react fast when it comes to rearming the continent. Here's more.
It's a very difficult situation we are in, unexpected, let me stress. Europe was preparing for second term of Trump, but we did not expect this at all. And this is a shock, and we know we need to react very fast. But on the other side, the European leaders, and I think the European public opinion expects the work on the US administration, on the US political elites to change this position, because we cannot believe that after so many years or centuries of being so close, now we will just find ourselves in the opposite camp. I think what shocks the most is the approach to Ukraine and the behavior of the new administration, and also the voting at the UN, which is unbelievable, in one row with Russia. I mean, this is something we really didn't expect. So Russia is our enemy. Russia positioned itself as an enemy of the West. And I think the European Union and other European countries, especially UK and other NATO members, now will react very fast to rearm the continent and be able to stick to our values.
As the US paused all aid to Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelenskyy delivered his nightly address, announcing that he's been in touch with the leaders of the Baltic States about the current security situation. Zelenskyy went on to call for security guarantees for his country.
The baseline scenario is to maintain our positions and ensure the conditions for proper diplomacy, for the fastest possible end to this war with a decent peace. We need peace, real, honest peace, not endless war. And we need security guarantees. It was the lack of security guarantees for Ukraine 11 years ago that allowed Russia to start with the occupation of Crimea and the war in Donbass. Then the lack of security guarantees allowed Russia to launch a full-scale invasion. And now, due to the lack of defined security guarantees, it is Russia that is keeping this war in full swing. We continued our work with European partners on a special diplomatic and security architecture. An architecture that can bring peace closer. I spoke with the leaders of the Baltic States, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia. It was a good conversation about the results of the summit in London and about the possibilities and vision of all processes with America, and about defense support.
European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has announced a new instrument that will provide EU member states with €150 billion in loans for defense efforts. This is also intended to finance military assistance for Ukraine, as well as European cybersecurity.
be a new instrument. It will provide 150 billion euros of loans to member states for defense investment. This is about basically spending better and spending together. And we're talking about pan-European capabilities, domains, like, for example, air and missile defense, the artillery systems, missiles and ammunition, drones and anti-drone systems, but also to address other needs from cyber to military mobility, for example. This will help member states to pool demand and to buy together. And of course, with this equipment, member states can massively step up their support to Ukraine. So immediate military equipment for Ukraine.
US Vice President J.D. Vance is expecting Ukraine to show willingness to, quote, give stuff up if Kyiv wants to secure a peace deal. In an interview for Fox News, Vance said that US President Trump will be eager to restart peace talks if Kyiv changes its attitude.
Of course, the door is open so long as Zelenskyy is willing to seriously talk peace. You can't come into the Oval Office or anywhere else and refuse to even discuss the details of a peace deal. Look, this is not going to make anybody happy. The Russians are going to have to give up stuff. The Ukrainians are going to have to give up stuff. You can't come to the Oval Office and say, give us security guarantees. We won't even engage with you about what we're willing to give up. That's been the Ukrainian posture. When that posture changes, as President Trump said, when they're willing to talk peace, I think President Trump will be the first person to pick up the phone. If you want real security guarantees, if you want to actually ensure that Vladimir Putin does not invade Ukraine again, the very best security guarantee is to give Americans economic upside in the future of Ukraine.
Meanwhile, Russian forces launched yet another attack on Ukraine overnight, targeting the Black Sea port of Odessa and its energy infrastructure. This has led to power cuts all over the city. Another attack on Sumy damaged a children's medical facility. Footage released by the State Emergency Service of Ukraine shows widespread destruction as emergency services try to put out the raging fires caused by the attack on Odessa. Local officials report that the attacks damaged the city's energy infrastructure. Authorities are now seeking alternative power sources to restore heating to local residents. In Sumy, another drone attack launched by Moscow hit a children's clinic, causing a fire to break out. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has rebuked Donald Trump and argued that world leaders should be supporting Volodymyr Zelenskyy as well as Ukraine in its pursuit of a just and lasting peace.
The mineral deal is not enough on its own, but can I just remind him, Russia is the aggressor. Yes. Zelenskyy is a war leader whose country has been invaded. Yes. And we should all be supporting him. Yes. And not fawning over Putin. Yes.
Do you want it back?
I haven't seen reports of the US withdrawing support for Ukraine, and as I understand, that is not their position. I thank him for his support on this issue, although I was somewhat concerned that the SNP is continuing its suggestion that now is the time to abandon the nuclear deterrent. If ever there was a time to reaffirm support for the nuclear deterrent, it is now. We mustn't reduce our security and defence. I think it is a completely wrong-headed decision they should reconsider.
Despite the US halting all of its aid for Ukraine, support for Kyiv and Volodymyr Zelenskyy continues to pour in from all over the world. On Tuesday, the Australian Prime Minister said that his country is ready to consider joining the coalition of the willing formed following a recent summit in London. Australia is ready to participate in a peacekeeping mission to Ukraine to ensure any ceasefire or peace deal is implemented and respected. So far, Australia has not been asked to partake in any such mission, but the Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has expressed readiness to do so if needed. Albanese also added that it is in Australia's national interest to stand with Ukraine. So far, Canberra has aided Kyiv with some €1.4 billion. European leaders will gather for a summit in Brussels on Thursday to discuss increased support for Ukraine. Slovakian Prime Minister Robert Fico, however, has threatened to block these efforts. On Monday, Fico announced that he could block the part of the summit on further financial and military aid for Ukraine. At the same time, he stated that he wouldn't block any summit conclusions if the EU supported Bratislava's proposal for gas transit through Ukraine. Bratislava would want the conclusions of the EU summit to also include a provision on the need for an immediate ceasefire with Russia. Fico plans to coordinate his actions and potential veto at the summit with Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, who has also stated that he does not support increasing military aid to Ukraine. In response to US President Trump's announcement of 25% tariffs on Canadian goods, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has vowed to retaliate with tariffs of his own.
Canada will not let this unjustified decision go unanswered. Should American tariffs come into effect tonight, Canada will, effective 12:01 a.m. EST tomorrow, respond with 25% tariffs against $155 billion of American goods, starting with tariffs on $30 billion worth of goods immediately, and tariffs on the remaining $125 billion on American products in 21 days' time. Our tariffs will remain in place until the US trade action is withdrawn, and should US tariffs not cease, we are in active and ongoing discussions with provinces and territories to pursue several non-tariff measures. While we urge the US administration to reconsider their tariffs, Canada remains firm in standing up for our economy, our jobs, our workers, and for a fair deal.
China has also strongly criticized Washington's decision to impose tariffs, calling it a violation of the World Trade Organization, or WTO, rules. At the same time, in response, the country has introduced its own tariffs on US food products.
Trade between nations should be conducted in accordance with the rules of the World Trade Organization, and trade disputes should also be resolved within the WTO framework. The unilateral imposition of tariffs by the US violates WTO rules and disrupts the security and stability of global industrial and supply chains. We hope that the US will work with China in the same direction and find solutions through equal consultations. China is willing to strengthen cooperation with countries around the world to jointly safeguard the hard-won multilateral trading system, oppose unilateralism and protectionism, and work together to promote inclusive and beneficial economic globalization.
Moving on to the Vatican. After suffering 2 episodes of acute respiratory failure, Pope Francis is again receiving non-invasive ventilation. The pontiff has been in the hospital for 19 days now. According to reports, the pontiff spent a fairly peaceful night at the Gemelli Clinic. The 88-year-old is currently battling double pneumonia. Last Friday, he suffered a respiratory crisis, but his condition seemed to stabilize by Monday. Francis has been in Rome's Gemelli Hospital since February 14th. After some improvement, his condition worsened and mechanical ventilation was introduced to help with his breathing. And that's a wrap for this news bulletin. World Talks with Benjamin Lee coming up next.